We're officially live, so we're going to be talking about the portion of it, the arguments. Aaron, you're there.
Hey, Noah, what's up?
How you doing, man? So you're on the ground in Tallahassee right now. So
Yes. So I'm right outside the Supreme Court. So we just oral arguments ended a short time ago outside right here on the steps of the Supreme Court. We've got over here a group of pro-abortion, pro-amendment protesters, and then we've got over here a group of pro-life activists as well on the steps of the court. So it's definitely still a live crowd over here.
I bet. So how did the oral arguments go? What happened?
So oral argument. So the Attorney General's team was the one first up to bat, and then followed by Matt Staber with Liberty Counsel, giving their arguments on why they believe this amendment is misleading and deceptive. As with any Supreme Court ruling, the justices were quick off the bat and asking question after question, peppering both attorneys in favor of the amendment and in opposition to the amendment on why their case was the best case. I was really encouraged by some of the questions, very strong, probing questions by several of the justices. Especially in terms of questioning and cross-examining the attorney for the pro-abortion side, Justice Meredith Sassow, one of the newest court members, was just very pointed in terms of, hammering away, the major implications if this amendment is passed. Justice Francis also, was asking questions about the misleading nature of the amendment is not properly representing the wide breadth and the scope of this amendment. Again, this amendment will enshrine abortion, as a constitutional right until the moment of birth, and that's not clearly stated within the language of the summary.
Right. Yeah. So where do you think? So I know the decision hasn't been reached yet.
Correct. Yes.
When
So April
when
1st,
is that expected?
April 1st is the deadline, is the statutory deadline that the court has to rule on that, which I anticipate they'll probably wait until, the very last minute to be able to release this ruling. I'm optimistic. Obviously, we don't put all our eggs in the, in the court basket. It could go either way. I'm optimistic, though, that we could see a good ruling on that side. But we're definitely engaged, on the ground, behind the scenes, and on the front lines in terms of fighting this amendment and bringing awareness to people about how just dangerous this amendment is. It is, it is broad, it is misleading, it will legalize abortion, up until the moment of birth here in the state of Florida, pretty much for any quote-unquote health reason, which again, health is not defined in this amendment. We could have, mothers who are having morning sickness or even mental health issues during pregnancy, and anxiety, stress could be counted as, justifications for having abortion up until the moment of birth. The term viability is not defined in this amendment, and so it makes it appear that the legislature can regulate abortion after viability. Well, viability is not defined, number one, and number two, the health exception is so broad that it basically nullifies any ability of the legislature to restrict the abortion amendment, of what the issue of abortion in any way. This is so broad. The legislature, this amendment is, on its face, it says, no law shall delay or restrict in any way abortion. So we're talking about, actually, Justice Coriel brought up any, the ability of having health standards or health regulations could even be perceived as being restrictive of abortion, and therefore could be struck down potentially under this constitutional amendment. This is extremely broad. Things like, the 24-hour waiting period bill, parental consent will be wiped off the books. Just basic health and sanitary rules for abortion clinics could potentially be wiped off the books. So this is a very widespread and broad amendment that's extremely dangerous and enshrining an almost absolute right to abortion until the moment of birth in our state constitution.
Yeah, and so it's awesome that you're there on the ground. You got to hear. I'm sure you. Now, just remind me, was anyone testifying during this, or was it just a strict?
So it's just the attorney. So it's just the attorneys for both sides that were the ones testifying on this. So thankfully, the crowd within the court, and I was able to be in one of the overflow rooms within the side of the Supreme Court. Thankfully, the crowd inside was, respectful and maintained decorum in the Supreme Court. So we were grateful for that.
So what did you hear on the opposing side's attorneys? What were they arguing?
Basically, they were saying that, these terms like viability and health and all the terms within the summary, everybody understands what those are. Everybody knows what those are, clearly in the state of Florida. The problem is too, and this was referenced by some of the justices. But I mean, some of these terms have very wide and broad meanings. Viability, for instance, just even from viability has changed over since even like Roe v. Wade, as our science and technology has improved as well.
Right.
So even in that sense, the term viability is not defined. And I think it was Justice Sasso that was like, why didn't you? It was either Justice Sasso or Justice Grosshans. It was like, wouldn't it have made more sense for you to put an actual like, week number, like, whether it's 15 weeks or 21 weeks or something like that, instead of just having this vague term of viability. And it's because it allows the pro-abortion side to be able to push the limit as far as they can on even when the complete restrictions on state interference are enacted. I mean, let alone the loophole, the health exception loophole that basically creates a pathway for abortion up until birth.
And what is viability right now? Is it at 21 weeks?
Approximately 21 to 20, around 21, 24 weeks. It again, it depends. It depends.
Sure.
It will probably change in the next 20 to 30 years as science improves and technology improves, and how we're able to preserve the lives of the the newborns.
Right, so they're basically advocating for up until the point of having, let's just call it 21 weeks. Sure. They're advocating abortion up until that point
with zero restrictions or
with zero restrictions
like that. And again, we're talking about babies. Even at that, I mean, forget the late-term abortions that would be allowed, under this amendment. But we're talking about 21 weeks. These are babies that can feel pain. These are, that we're having horrible dismemberment abortions that are literally ripping these babies to shreds. I mean, that's the gruesome practices that would be allowed under this amendment, even as acknowledged by the, the attorneys for the abortion side. And the funny thing is, too, in terms of I think one of the biggest debates by the court is this, in a hypothetical sense was, we're trying to determine, in the hypothetical, is this a wolf in wolf's clothing or is this a wolf in sheep's clothing? And I think, that was kind of the debate back and forth, in a little bit of, a hypothetical scenario. But one thing I found fascinating was, I believe it was Justice Coriel was questioning, it was either Justice Coriel or Justice Muniz was questioning the abortion attorney. And she even acknowledged, I think in a Freudian slip, that, she almost acknowledged that it was a wolf, but that, this amendment was a wolf. But her acknowledgement was that, well, no, it's we're upfront, we're transparent, we're clear about what we're trying to do. So it was interesting. I think it was a Freudian slip on her part.
Right.
But,
yeah, they're claiming transparency, but there's a lot of underlying problems with that. So,
yeah, exactly.
So did anything else worth mentioning happen? Is anything happening with the protesters or during the oral arguments?
So, I mean, thankfully, again, as I mentioned earlier, decorum was maintained in the court. Out here, there was a little bit of conflict toward the beginning with some of the there was some issues in terms of some potential conflicts between the pro-life advocates and the pro-abortion protesters that were out here. Thankfully, it appears that most of those concerns, were quickly alleviated. The security out here has been good. There's obviously some chanting going on. You may hear in the background from the pro-abortion side, but I think overall the peace was maintained, decorum was maintained, and we're just praying and hopeful that the court will rule in the right direction, and just pull this deceptively and misleadingly worded amendment off the ballot, because again, if the abortion side has every right under our Constitution to come forward with this amendment. But under the Constitution, you need to be honest and you need to be transparent with what this amendment actually does. And again, another point that was brought up too is the name of the amendment too is misleading, because it says it's about limiting government interference with abortion. Well, the term limiting connotates that government has some, it restricts government's power some, but not all the way, when the actual text of the amendment, when the actual summary in the language of the amendment, in essence, really eliminates any government interference or any governmental regulation with abortion here in the state of Florida. So again, even the title of the amendment itself is very deceptive, and that was pointed out by the Attorney General's lawyers in the arguments.
Well, I'm glad that we have you down or up in Tallahassee, there on the ground and kind of getting all the updates here for us. We will be doing a live with Dr. Kevin Baird later to kind of discuss a little more about this as well. But Aaron, thanks for doing, and just a reminder for everyone out there, keep praying that these justices make the right decision and to give clarity to the whole scenario. So
Definitely. Thank you, Noah. God
thank
bless you.
you. Yep. God bless.